Wilson looking to drive, blows by his man. Right hand layup, good.
Ahead to Adams.
Here's a lob. There's the slam. Brady Dick on the throwdown.
Well, here we are, another edition of the Jay Hawker Podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System. As per normal, I'm joined by Wayne Simien and back-to-back 20-game winner, Brandon Schneider. Brandon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Last night, big night for you. Unfortunate you didn't make the NCAA tournament, but you guys have turned it into a positive. Back-to-back home games in the women's NIT. Last night, beating our old arch rival by the exact same amount of points that the men beat them this year. Which did you keep people in just to get to that 28-point margin?
I was not aware of the exact margin of victory.
75-47 last night. The men won 95-67. So welcome, and let's talk a little bit about last night.
You know, it was obviously my first opportunity and our team's first opportunity in a long time to compete against Mizzou. And I've lived in the state of Kansas now for 23 years and feel like I have a pretty good understanding as to, you know, what competing against Missouri means, you know, to our school, to our community and to our state, and couldn't be prouder of the competitive effort that our young women demonstrated last night.
You know, it was a game that didn't get any scoring from your bench. All five starters counted for all the points, but shot 51% from the field, made 10 threes, 10 out of 20. Zakiah led with 21, but it was a team effort with those starters.
Well, and what I would say is, you know, I know our bench didn't light up the stat sheet, but they didn't have a turnover. Right. So I thought they came in and played hard and, you know, were assignment correct defensively. We felt like we were going to see a lot of zone, and fortunately, you know, we made threes and were able to get them out of it, at least in the first half.
Wayne was on the call last night. What did you see?
Yeah, well, exactly what you were saying. It was great to be able to see the bench's production in other capacities, but of course, the most production came from your two all-conference players, Zakiah Franklin and Tiana Jackson, and just talk about the type of season that they've had. Obviously, they had big games last night, but throughout the full year, they've been playing at a high level, which has led your team in a significant way. Why don't you talk to us about them?
You know, KB's a player that you know, has gotten all-conference recognition every year, but in an honorable mention capacity. So it's great to see her persistence, her dedication, and hard work pay off to develop into a first-team all-conference player. You know, she shot the ball really well in the offseason. She and I talked about extending her range. She was one of the few players on our team that I felt like when the three-point line moved back, it hurt her a little bit. And she worked really hard to extend her range and is now shooting, you know, I'd have to check, but in the high 40s from three this year. And then I don't think there's a player that's a more improved player than Tiana Jackson in the country. She's doubled her statistics. I think last year obviously showed that she was a terrific defender and rebounder, but the hard work that she's put in with Coach Terry Nooner in the offseason to further develop her offensive skill set has really paid off for her. I read a stat the other day. I think she's the first player since 2011 to average 15 points, 12 rebounds, and shoot over 60% in NCAA women's basketball. So I think really just speaks to her impact on our program's success.
You know, at the timing of this taping, we're here on Tuesday, but on Thursday, Nebraska. Back on December 21st, you had it was your first loss, triple overtime. I was actually listening to the game, listening to Stephen Davis on the call, and it was just back and forth, obviously, a lot of lead changes, and just couldn't dig it out. How excited are you to have them in your own building, knowing that you don't have to go up there, because we know their fan base would be, 9,000.
Yeah.
And last night our fan base was great. It was a really good atmosphere. But talk about that game on December 21st and how excited you are to have a third game in a row in Allen Fieldhouse.
Well, I think, Nebraska's really solid. They've got weapons on the perimeter. Their interior's really good as well. They made some really hard shots in key moments, and we missed some layups at game point. So it's frustrating. Holly Kerskeeter, I played her way too much in that game. She was coming off the flu, and should have given her more breaks. But our team was different back then. Ioana Hatsalionte was playing, and we haven't had her now for 2 months. So we're playing a little bit different style, but I know it's going to be a tremendous challenge. As for our crowd, I thought it was terrific last night, and so grateful to our administration for supporting us in our efforts to have home games during this tournament.
Kind of expand on that, like how everything works, and we talked last night about how proud you were of our administration in making this happen.
Well, I think the people who are running the WNIT are smart. It becomes a bidding. There's a minimal bid for each round, but then as you advance, it's a bidding process. And to pit Kansas and Missouri, in a bidding process is smart. Right. To pit Kansas and Nebraska, but credit Travis and Nicole, for supporting, our young women and giving us the opportunity to have great experiences in Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah, and you talked about the team being a little bit different from when you guys faced Nebraska early in the year. And of course, we all know that game that is leading right up until the Christmas break can oftentimes be a trap game, especially when it's on the road. Now you have an opportunity to play with Nebraska on your home court, playing some of your best and most energized basketball. Talk to us a little bit about how you turn the disappointment of having missed out on the NCAA tournament to a determination to have these girls come out and play well, because not a lot of teams do that well. They let the disappointment of maybe missing out on the tournament linger. Maybe they just want to get the season over with, but that certainly hasn't been the case for your group these last 2 games and even beyond. And so what were some things that you keyed on in helping those girls understand that?
Yeah, Wayne, I mean, we were devastated and shocked. I mean, we didn't see any way that we weren't going to get selected based on the numbers and the criteria that the committee talks about. So we were hurt, we were angry, frustrated, and to be honest, I didn't know that I was going to be able to, I think I had to kind of coach myself through it a little bit. But then we just talked about, that we have to turn these emotions and convert them into a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to continue to compete for Kansas, to perhaps do it in Allen Fieldhouse, and that there was something to be won. And there's a right way to respond. And fortunately, I think especially in the second half of the Western Kentucky game, we kind of got out of that funk a little bit and have competed really hard. And our practices have been short, but have been energetic and enthusiastic.
Yeah, I mean, you turn adversity into a positive. That's kind of what you have to do as a coach all the time. You have losses, you have whatever. And so the criteria, I think on the men's side and the women's side, we're all kind of like, all right, what do you want us to do? And now I love the fact that you didn't just run and hide. And we saw some programs on the men's side say, I don't want to play in the NIT. But how valuable is it for that, even though you're not practicing, you're not having long practices, but it's good to have them still together. You're going to have a big core coming back. And how important is it to have these extra games?
Well, Greg, we felt like we do have a lot of players coming back, and 3 who are going to use their COVID year, who are significant parts of our program. We referenced a few years ago Arizona, won the NIT, and the next year went to the Final Four and played for the national championship. And as we saw out in Arizona this year, their fan base is phenomenal, and that was the tournament that really, I think, built that base that is now really consistent. So we referenced that, and just talking about, hey, this is what you came to Kansas for, was to play basketball, and to do it for your school and for your program and for your community. And like I said, I give the players a lot of credit for responding what we feel like is the right way.
How much do you back in November, we were on the Rubber Chicken Circuit, banquet, whatever, you and Bill talking to, we go to Topeka, Kansas City, Wichita, and all over the place. But you referenced that Arizona game. You said, hey, let's schedule a game or two on the road, Nebraska, Arizona, to get us to the NCAA tournament. You do that. You go to Arizona and beat a top 10 Arizona team at the time. You do everything that you think you're supposed to do. How much conversation will you have with the NCAA and the committee? Is there even a chance to do that? Can you say, like, we did what we thought we were supposed to do. Tell us what we did wrong.
Well, I think those are conversations that can happen at Big 12 meetings. When you have representatives from the NCAA there, I think we do have to own, as our players have, that we didn't do enough. The TCU loss killed us. We had two bad losses, one at K-State when Holly Kerskeeter was out with a concussion, and then we just laid an egg. So we have to own that. The problem is with the scheduling, because I was given information last spring on how to upgrade our schedule, but now we've done that for 2 years.
Yeah.
So, we're playing UConn next year. We're playing Virginia Tech, who one was a 2 seed, one was a 1 seed. We're playing Nebraska again. We're playing at Texas A&M. So I hope at some point strength of schedule and net does become an important factor, because we were the only team that was in the 30s that did not get in. There were 6 teams that had a higher net than us that got in, and we also had more top 50 wins than those same 6 teams that got in. So that part is what it is, but I also think as a program, as a player and as a coach, you have to own that we didn't do enough and fight to not let that happen again.
You'd mentioned some other notable fan bases earlier in the recording, and Arizona, Nebraska, and actually one of the top fan base attendance for a Kansas women's basketball game happened in a WNIT championship game in Allen Fieldhouse. And so how much have you communicated that to the team, and how much are you hopeful that this fan base comes out and continues to support you guys on this journey? Because the reality is we still have an opportunity to play for a championship. We still have an opportunity to cut down nets. And so this is still valuable, important, exciting basketball being played.
Absolutely. We referenced the picture. There's a picture of the game you're talking about when I think it was South Florida came to town for the WNIT championship. And for what I can tell, it's a full house. And we told our players, if you've never seen it, the next time you walk up to the office, stop in the hallway. That's what's possible. Now we have to do our part. We have to continue to play well, win games. But I truly believe that, as we saw last night, our crowds will grow as we move forward. And we want to do our best, to give them what they pay for.
There's also been some pretty notable individual mile markers, several of which you've got a chance to tap into. 500th win all time, 100th win as a Kansas basketball coach. Tiana Jackson reset her own record last night in all-time blocks for a single season. Tell us about some of those individual mile markers, how important they are for you professionally, but then even what Twin's been able to do and the magnitude of that type of record.
Yeah, I'm so proud of Twin. Last year she broke a 30-year-old shot block record and turned around and broke it again. And somebody asked her about it last night, and the next thing she said was, well, I'm going to break it again next year. So,
and I think it's even so impressive because Now teams know what type of rim protector she is, and they're doing everything they can offensively to keep her away from the basket. We saw that against Western Kentucky. We saw it against Missouri. 5 out, 1 in, or 4 out, maybe 4 out, 1 in, 5 out. And she's doing an incredible job of even having to guard a perimeter player, stay in front of them, and even contest at the rim. I mean, that's a difficult skill to develop as a shot blocker, 6'6", and as the biggest player on the court.
I think shows her versatility, and the other thing she has is a head coach who's all over her about do not foul. Do not foul. So she's been judicious, I think, in her aggressiveness. In the first half last night, we saw her really wall up and not leave her feet and try to stay out of foul trouble. And then as she goes through a game and she knows, hey, I've only got one, and we're deep into the second or we're early in the third, well, now I'm gonna leave my feet and I'm gonna try to beat it into the bank. I think that's a skill in its own, just to mentally be engaged enough to know to pick my spots.
Before we let you go, Thursday night, Nebraska in Allen Fieldhouse. You've got past knowledge of them, playing them just 3 months ago. Give us a scouting report, keys to the game for Thursday night.
Well, just really balanced. They've got a great guard in Shelley, and then they're one of those teams that can bring multiple bigs off the bench. They're tough, they're physical, they're really organized in how they play. They're going to run a lot of sets. So in a short preparation, I think our attention to detail is going to be really important. Should be a great game.
I think it's appropriate to end this segment with the call of the week, called by Wayne Simien.
Is it? I think maybe we'll do the radio call with Stephen Davis and David Lawrence.
Well, why don't you recreate the call, even if it is Stephen's call, and we'll compare and contrast.
Hey, well, even though I have to recreate the call, it was an incredible call. We alluded to it earlier with Tiana Jackson's record-setting shot block against Missouri, a record that hopefully we'll be having another call again, because she certainly plans on resetting that record, which she certainly has the capability of doing. And so check out the call of the week, brought to you by the KC Barbecue Store. Go and get all of your barbecue store needs. Visit them on their website, kcbarbecuestore.com. Going to see Dan. Then, of course, don't forget to check out the Gosney Patio Pizza Dome, which can only be bought exclusively at the Kansas City Barbecue Store.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you. The Jay Hugger Podcast, Brandon Schneider, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System.
Kelly goes inside against Jackson, tries to get a shot up, partially blocked. KU's got it. Jackson just tied her single-season block shot record from a year ago.
It was late, and one of my patients was having trouble sleeping. He was feeling uneasy, he told me. I asked him, is there anything I can do to help? I'm pretty sure he's the only patient ever to ask me to dance at 2 a.m. But sometimes, being the best nurse I can be is just being the best person I can be.
And we're back with a Jay Hugger Podcast. Just had Brandon Schneider, nice little sit down with him, coming off back-to-back women's NIT victories here in Allen Fieldhouse, with a third one coming up in a couple days. So good stuff from Coach Brandon. I know he's a great friend of yours, and it's fun to see their success coming off of a time of adversity when they didn't make the NCAA tournament, and there was frustrations, and you and I talked, but they've turned a negative into a positive.
Yeah, and they're still playing March basketball, which is an advantage for any program. The more you can continue to keep your team on the floor and progress and advance to continue to get exposure like they are, and they're trying to obviously increase their recruiting footprint locally, regionally, but especially in the Kansas City area. There's a ton of local talent here in the Kansas City area on the women's basketball side, one of which is going to be coming next year, and the five-star recruit Samaya Nichols. And so, they're great, and they're trying to keep the thing going.
When you just made a statement, and it kind of I kind of got hurt in my stomach when you said they're continuing on into March Madness, and unfortunately on the men's side we are not. And that was a gut punch. That was not expected, but it's the craziest tournament out there. It's what makes it great. even though it didn't make it great for us. I'm referring to obviously the 1-point defeat in Des Moines this past weekend against Arkansas. You and I were obviously there, and it was a tough one to swallow. But as I said in post game and several other interviews I've done since then, you know, when you're in it as much as we're in it, this is going to happen. Sucks. 32 years of NCAA basketball tournaments, we've won the national championship 3 times. So what happened on Saturday has happened more often than winning it all. That drive home, you and I were on the phone for about an hour of it, just trying to absorb it and digest it and figure out where
we were venting a little bit too.
Amy had to sit there and listen to you and I complain about everything, and it sucks. There's no other way to put it. It's like your dog died. I mean, you have an empty feeling, our fan base, our coaches, our players, and that's the more important piece, the guys that have put their heart and soul into this. We think we have as well, and we're sad, but it's the players, it's the coaches, and it's the entire support staff that just feels a void.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the most difficult tournaments out there, which is why it's such a joyous occasion when teams get selected for it. I know it's become quite the norm for us over the years, but that's still a big deal, and it certainly is a big deal when you're able to win it all. And so one of the things, just perspective-wise, is it's what makes last year even more special, is understanding how difficult this thing is. And I think you said it right, as frustrated as you and I are from a former player standpoint, or our loyal fan base, which they certainly have the right to be. You know, no one's hurting more than that group of guys there in that locker room. And it's such a sudden stoppage of your season, and no one forecasts the ending that way, especially in the first weekend. First weekend exits, especially when you're a 1 seed, are just devastating.
You know, a couple years ago, we lost in the first weekend to Auburn, but that wasn't a team like this. That was a team that was, I believe we were a 4 seed. We were in Salt Lake City. It wasn't regional because we didn't do enough during the regular season to earn the geographical advantage that you get when you're a 1 seed to go to just 3 hours away in Des Moines. But if I don't see Des Moines for a while, I'm okay with that. It was like 0 degrees out and wasn't a whole lot to do, but that's just my I think I'd feel different. It's kind of like the beer's always colder when you win, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's nothing against Des Moines, but that was frustrating that it was so cold, and looking at it selfishly. But again, 3 years ago in Salt Lake, there wasn't the sting. There wasn't the burn. We ran into a team that went to the Final Four in Auburn, and who knows what will happen to Arkansas. But they played better in that 10-minute span than we did. We never established a bigger – early on when they were missing everything and we had a nice lead, we never really got that up any higher. We allowed them to hang around. It was a 10, 12-point deficit for them, and we couldn't make it 20. And we had a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of things you can point back to. In the second half, front ends of 1-and-1s. The 10-second call, which to this day I still think was an awful call. Like, you and I watch a ton of basketball. That happens all the time. His foot was on the line, and for a guy to make that call baffles me. That, you know, whatever. I'm sure the pool reporter or whatever they say, well, it was the right call. The director of officials will say that, but
sure.
We've seen it so many times not called. It's like calling 3 seconds on game point. It just doesn't happen. But hey, look at our game compared to the K-State game against Kentucky. They made shots in the final 3 minutes. We didn't. Arkansas made shots in the final 3 minutes. We didn't. That was the difference in the game. It's a shot maker's tournament.
And for the record, I'm still licking my wounds. I haven't watched one NCAA tournament play since we've lost.
Really?
I don't know that I will. Still feeling the sting from that. But we had opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think the frustrating thing is that we could have and should have beat Arkansas. I think that, you know, it came down to 1 or 2 small little plays that didn't have necessarily all that to do with game-winning shots. You think about, a turnover on side out of bounds, and that's just something that's simple as going after a basketball with two hands in traffic. And
that personnel switch was because of foul trouble. You have Zach in there; he's just not in the game very much.
And we've been vulnerable in that all year long, right?
Bench came back to hurt us.
Yeah, that was a little tough. And then you get the missed free throw block out, and then another offensive rebound. So those are small little intangible things that you're like, man, if we just could have gotten some of those, that could have been the difference between win and lose. And, hey, I didn't think the whistle was all that bad. I like physical games. I kind of prefer that. The one that surprised me the most was the technical foul.
Yeah.
And this is why. Usually when there's some type of chippiness or chirping going on in that type of setting, especially when the play is stopped, and it was they were lining up for a free throw. Usually the official steps in and gives guys a warning because the play stopped. Okay,
right.
They were separated. There was no threat of a physical altercation. You have a first-team All-American who you've officiated before. Usually there's some type.
And that was Marcus Pettigrew, who officiates.
Big 12,
Big 12 guy.
Yeah, usually there's a
warning,
a grace or a warning or respect. Hey, I've officiated you before. Hey, I know, we know each other. And so that just really surprised me,
and that had a huge effect.
And that was his third, right? That was
it was his second.
Okay.
Now what happened was, I was sitting courtside, obviously, and there was a play where they drove to the basket and they called a foul on Jalen, and he had an and one. They go to the free throw line, and they're both barking at each other a little bit, but 0 fouls turned into 2 in 1 second. And that put Jalen on the bench the rest of the way, and we actually held the lead or maybe even increased on the lead while he was on the bench, but it definitely took our best scorer off the floor. And so, we can talk about game point when the block charge on Kevin. I don't know. The thing I always find, whatever you call, be demonstrative about it. Don't just, they kind of went like this, then he goes block. Like, that tells me they didn't know what to call. So why blow the whistle? Why? 99 times out of 100, that's a charge throughout the year. And at game point, they called it a block.
Yeah, that's tough. And, something that, Kevin has to decide in that moment. Maybe he didn't know time and score. And usually in settings like that, you want to do whatever you can do not to put the decision in the official's hands. Yeah. And so, that's a difficult one.
And then even
to
then,
be able to
he gets 2 free throws. He misses the second one, and to your point, we can't come down with the rebound. That would have been a 1-point game with the ball. Instead, the free throw shooter, Ricky Council, got it back, got fouled again, made both. Then it turns into a 3-point game. And then you bring into the other coach, does he foul? They actually didn't foul the 3-point shooter. Jalen got fouled on a drive to the bucket. He made both free throws, and they did it again. And they fouled before we got the 3 up, and that's all she wrote. Jalen did his best to miss, and he banked it in.
Because you don't practice missing. It's funny when I got home and my sons were asking me, hey, how come Jalen didn't miss? He shot it off the backboard.
Have you seen him bank one in this year?
Yeah, he was trying to miss it, but it's interesting. And free throw shooting is another thing. Look, we practice free throw shooting every day. There isn't much to it. You just practice it. Some guys got it, some guys don't. It's one of the most difficult things you ever do in sport, especially when the game's on the line, millions of people watching. But when it comes to missing that free throw, it's actually harder than what you would think it would be. I did like the adjustment that Coach Roberts had. He had Ernest Uday hop right back in there to possibly try to get a tip back. And so things were set up. It just banked in and was unfortunate.
All right, I've been asked this a lot, and I want to get your take on it. Eric Musselman's antics after the game, thoughts?
Well, the best way to keep that from happening is win the ball game, And so,
very politically correct way to say
it's just the right thing to do, whether it's, any type of celebration, whether it's when we're on the road and we constantly have what happens when we lose on the road. Every single time. Right. And there's always controversy kind of around that, and the best way to eliminate that is to win the ball game. And so, but we got to understand, it's a big deal when people beat Kansas.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's a compliment. Now, does it get under your skin? Does it irritate you? Yes. But it is a big deal when you see a 1 seed or a program of our pedigree, get upset.
Wow, that's such a politically correct way to answer that question.
So what's the right answer? Did you have a right answer?
It was more of a deflection more than anything. I thought it was clownish. I thought it was immature. I thought it showed disrespect. I feel that it showed disrespect to his team. He made it about him and didn't make it about the guys on the floor that won the game. All we're seeing now is Eric Musselman with his shirt off in a round of 32 game. To me, and we know our coach won't do that. We know that, 99% of the coaches wouldn't do that. And I know my Arkansas friends will say, well, he did it in Nevada, and he's been doing it in Arkansas. That doesn't make it right. I mean, I think just show a little class, show a little respect, and don't put the attention on you. You're the coach. You're a great coach. You're a great coach. You've been to back-to-back Elite Eights, have a chance to get to back-to-back Elite Eights and maybe a Final Four, and who knows, and you made it about yourself.
So
my thoughts.
Which do you think is worse? Because part of the reason why I'm not all that impressed or have a lot of commentary around Eric Musselman's antics is because we saw earlier another head coach's antics in the season that was far more egregious and annoying than that, and that was Coach Drinkowitz holding the sign
Oh, my God.
in the student section at Mizzou. I never thought I'd see anything worse than that, and if we compare the two, even though we did win big at Mizzou, I'm putting that one. I'm putting that my annoyance meter is a lot higher on that one, which allows me to bypass Musselman.
And the difference is that's the football coach doing it at a basketball game. I'd never seen anything like that either, and I just the pettiness to do that to me in that game. And we never really we discussed it a little bit, but when you got Lane Kiffin on Twitter tweeting a picture of Eli Drinkwitz holding it that says, "Come on, man," that should tell you everything. I don't know Lane Kiffin. I just know that he sometimes puts his foot in his mouth, and he's questioning that. That's a good poll on your part. I kind of forgot about that, but you're right. You compare the two, and my opinion is show it on the floor. Go out, get your guys ready, win, and the accolades will come. But to do clown type stuff like that, to us, obviously, in the most hallowed grounds of college basketball, would never happen, and everybody gets sick of tradition and how we all talk about it, but it's true. That's just, you're just trying to draw attention to yourself, take it away from the team. I've talked about it too long. You deflected. I'll take the heat. Not that I don't know if there'll be any heat, but I think it's ridiculous. Good luck to them. They beat us. We're not taking nothing away from them. You're actually, the only thing you're taking away from them is the focus on them and on your, bad body. I would never do that because I have a worse body. But anyway, as we move forward and put the, close up this season as far as basketball-wise and move forward into a time that we're going to probably have a massive amount of replacements, because I do think there's going to be some departures. Yesterday we saw the announcement that Cam Martin is leaving. There's probably going to be others to follow. We know that in all likelihood, Jalen Wilson, Grady Dick, Kevin McCullough are going to be gone. Those are 3 of your top 5 scorers, and you're going to have some bench guys have to make a decision. So we've already signed our 3 guys from the high school ranks, and I believe our 4th possibly could be here next year as well. So there's 4. And what are our needs? You look at the wing position, Grady, Jalen, Kevin. The 3 high school kids are all guards. Do we have enough trust in 3 brand new freshmen picking up the slack for a 5th-year player, a 4th-year player, and a freshman, Grady Dick, that was an elite shooter? I don't know. The only opportunity now, because there's not like there's a Grady Dick out there in high school that's, hey, where should I go to college next year? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, those guys are gone.
It's going to be the transfer portal. 173 kids put their name in the transfer portal on the first day. First day. That means that number's going to grow to probably in the 1,000, or at least 1,000. now you got to be good and pick and choose. Unfortunately, now our staff is up there perusing that site and trying to figure out refresh and trying to figure out who we need to replace and who is a good fit. And there's 16 teams still in the tournament. And there's going to be a lot of guys from those 16 teams that will be in the transfer portal in 2 weeks. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint something when you don't know the full list.
Yeah, it really is. And in this type of setting, you don't lose early in the tournament and then head to Cabo or, off to vacation.
The NBA. Yeah.
It's back to work. The guys will get a week off likely, and then they'll get back, into doing some individual workouts and some lifting and some off-season conditioning and kind of reset the process, all over again. But, that is just a kind of a unique dynamic that the portal adds is, just a little bit new facet of recruiting, and one of the things that Coach Self has gone on to say several times is he likes to be older, right? And he wants to get more athletic.
Yep.
So I'd imagine that those are the criteria in which they're probably evaluating the portal. And hey, who's an older upperclassman out there that's had, real experience against Power 5, maybe not in the Power 5, but a lot of times you see mid-majors playing multiple Power 5 teams. Maybe they've got some tournament experience as well. Hey, obviously we're going to need to find another knockdown shooter, as that was something that we labored in with that last game. And then LinkedIn athleticism is something that I imagine is going to be a key priority as well.
You said you didn't watch any basketball on Sunday. I did. Amy, Sunday night was like.
I did yard work all day long. I mulched all day.
Huh.
Stewed.
Wow. Are you sore?
Yes.
That's why I don't do that. Proud of you. No, not for me. I sat on my fat butt for 12 hours and watched pretty much every single game that was on TV. That's the difference between you and me. You can take it and put it away, but you have, 11 kids at home. I've got 0.
Just 600. This shy of that.
Okay, I'm
5's
sorry.
Fine.
Seems
Go
like
ahead.
a lot. Seems like a lot coming from an empty nester. But yeah, I sat there and I watched it all. And my point is, we saw, we talked a lot about Arkansas's athleticism leading up to our game, and I don't know if that really took over until late in the game. I think they were getting offensive rebounds. They were making athletic shots. I mean, the shot that Ricky Council made at it wasn't game point, but it was a tie ball game. They had the ball, it was about a minute on the clock. He got the switch he wanted, which we wanted too, where KJ's on him. KJ can defend anybody. He does a really good job on him, forces him to the right. He takes a fadeaway, 17-footer.
Pro shot, yeah.
And made it. And that's the difference. And so when we watched K-State and Kentucky, when we watched all the games on Sunday, or at least I did, guys made shots down the stretch. And that's taking nothing away from our guys. But we had to get it done at the free throw line because we weren't making shots. They were fouling. But Bill, Norm, KT, and Jeremy and the rest of our staff are going to look for that Ricky Council or for that Davis or for whoever that we can replace our 3 scorers with.
Is he out there?
Is he out? That's the question.
Well, we can have pretty good confidence in that as we think about our previous 2 transfer portal guys in Remy Martin and
the difference, transfer portal's been around now for 2 years. This will be the 3rd. And Bill dabbled, because we had a lot of returners, even though 2 years ago, Remy Martin was the stud. But you also had Jalen Coleman-Lands, Joe Yesufu, Cam Martin. But then you get Kevin McCullough. So he's really found one guy each year. Now he's probably going to have to find, 4? What do you think the number is?
I don't know. Potentially we got to see how the chess pieces move.
And I thought there'd be more movement last year, but everybody came back. You look at some of the guys that didn't really play much this year, they're probably evaluating like, all right, if I couldn't get it this year, what's going to make me think I'm going to get it next year? I mean, that's going to have to be a decision that a lot of guys make with their family and their group. Everybody's got a group. And it's probably your AAU coach, your high school coach, your mom and dad, whatever. And so it'll be an interesting next week, couple weeks. And I think next time we come back, we'll try to get a coach on with us to kind of recap the season and then talk about next year's team, because we want to turn the page. We don't want to dwell on what happened. It needs to stick in our minds and know how, so our guys know how abruptly it can come to an end. 2 weeks ago, we were flying high. We're a 1 seed. We're going to Des Moines. Think we're going to Vegas. And 6 days later, we're done. Career's over. Time's over. Now we're sitting there. You're laying mulch. I'm eating chips and drinking beer on my sofa. So it's the difference between a 50-year-old and a 40-year-old. I'd like to talk about Black & Veatch, a new supporter, an additional supporter of the Jayhawker podcast, comes from Black & Veatch, where employee owners are building a world of difference. Visit bv.com to learn more about how Black & Veatch is solving humanity's biggest infrastructure challenges. Another great sponsor of ours is the Hilton President downtown. You and I spent a ton of time down there a couple weeks ago. Their options with the stay and play, come down, have breakfast, have lunch, have dinner. You got great food, 100 feet away from the, couple hundred feet away from the Power and Light. The T-Mobile Center, now that basketball is over. Well, you could go down there now if you're a true basketball fan. And even though you're a KU supporter, as you're listening to the Jayhawker podcast, call Philip Stranad, go to the President Hotel. If you just love basketball, Texas will be there. I don't really want to see Texas anymore, because Texas probably kept us out of Kansas City, and they're the ones going there. Would you say that's probably accurate?
Maybe.
A loss in Austin,
yeah.
A loss in Kansas City. We still thought we were going to get it, but now it's ironic that they're the team. But check out the President Hotel, downtown Kansas City, right off the Power and Light. Call Philip Stranad and check it out. What else we got, buddy? Is this going to do it for 2 days, 3 days after the abrupt ending?
Yeah, this will do it. Got another border showdown or border war, as you and I grew up in that era with
It's a war.
Kansas and Missouri baseball playing at Kauffman Stadium on
Wednesday night.
Yeah. I think we got some good weather for that. So
April 7th, the showcase, Kansas football, be a Friday night over at David Booth Memorial Stadium. So get that on your calendar. We'll all be there.
The following weekend, the 100th running of the Kansas Relays. And so we look forward to having some guests on around the spring showcase, spring ball, and relays. And so even though Kansas basketball is on the men's side is done for this spring, we'll still have some incredible things to talk about and some awesome guests to be on. So make sure you guys stay locked in with us.
We got the banquet, the basketball banquet in between there. We'll hear a Brian Haney poem, as he's probably writing that right now.
Have some draft preparation, have some NBA playoffs getting started up. We'll have to tap into some of our Jayhawks in the NBA from scout standpoint, coaches. Maybe you can find a player or two to get on. So lots going on. You and I are planning on going to Vegas this summer for another summer league event where we'll have some former players that are coaches and scouts in the NBA, plus our current players that'll be playing in the summer league will come out, and we had an event last year with all those guys, so looking forward to that. So a lot to look forward to. Don't want to dwell too much on what happened, but it is what it is. It's frustrating, but we will always be here for you to give you the best content possible. Isn't that right? That's right. Well, this is the Jayhawker podcast. Thanks to Brandon Schneider for being our guest in preparation for Thursday night's WNIT matchup. You'll be on the call once again with Josh Klingler, Stephen Davis, and David Lawrence on the radio. You will be on TV, obviously, because of your wonderful look. Mainly because I'm 3-0 right now in that call, so I think they're going to keep Klingler and I lockstep together on those calls until we drop one. No brainer. We'll see you Thursday night in the Fog against Nebraska. Thanks, buddy. This has been the Jayhawker podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System.